the Women Unleashed podcast. Join us as we share with you the confronting, fun, wild, fucked up, epic, and raw side of being a woman in today's world.
Come along on our journey as we dive deeply into what makes us tick and how we create our lives. Nothing is off limits.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Women Unleashed podcast. You are with Taylor
And Britt.
And today we've decided that we need to take you back a little bit further in Britt's journey, back to before she was 16, her childhood, and share a little bit about that before we really get into when the eating disorder began. What do you think, Britt?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And you'll be listening to this episode before what we thought was going to be the first episode of this series.
Yeah.
So I will just create for you what we're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
So I, Britt, lived with an eating disorder for 10 years, and we are doing a mini series, which is one of the things we said we would do on like special topics and things like that, about my life and living with an eating disorder. And the last episode will be the recovery. And the first episode was sort of starting from being 16 and where the disorder started. However, we just thought we should take it back.
Yeah, even further. Yeah, because I think we like to think things just start. They just happen sometimes. But I think in this case, and I think in most cases, there is a bit more to it. Yep. And maybe doing a bit of a deeper dive into your childhood might discover as well where some of these eating disorder habits came from.
Yeah, and I think it will enable people to self-reflect. Like they might see themselves in some of the things that I share about my childhood and cause themselves to self-reflect about that. And parents as well.
Yeah.
So, nothing bad, nothing wrong. I love all of my parents. I have multiple sets of mums and dads, as you'll find out, and they're all awesome. So, yeah, let's go.
Cool. And I guess just to start as well, we aren't psychologists, mental health workers. We don't have any background. So please, if anything triggers you, upsets you, or causes distress, even whether it's through the show or after, please don't hesitate to get in contact with a health professional.
Yep, definitely.
As well.
Definitely.
So, Britt, I guess maybe let's start with you just shared how you've got multiple mums and dads, which may be a little confusing for our listeners.
Yes.
Do you want to maybe dig a bit deeper into what that looks like and how that has occurred?
Yeah, totally. And if I lose you at any point, don't fit. Rightly so, because most of my boyfriends, I had to draw like a mud map of my family so that they could understand like the parental situation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good luck, everyone.
Yeah. So my biological parents had my older sister and myself, and they split when I was about like 2-ish. So like I don't really have memory of them being together.
Yeah.
And my mum had the 70%, dad had the 30% split of our time, really.
Okay. So you spent more of your time with your mum as a child. Yes. As a baby at 2. Well, 2's pretty baby.
Yeah, and up until the age of 14. That's
right.
How it was.
So your childhood. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And neither, like my parents were really young. Both my parents would have been less than 25 when that happened.
Yeah.
And like they just didn't know how to deal with the situation. Like,
do you mean with children or with being divorced?
Being divorced.
Yeah.
You know, like they're divorced for a reason. It wasn't like, it wasn't amicable.
It makes that harder. It's already hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you've got that thrown in too.
Yeah, totally. And they really desperately loved us both really a lot. And they would you know, each do things to express their love in certain ways, and some were functional and others were completely dysfunctional. So I guess as a child, I experienced a lot of upset, you know, crying, going from one parent to the other. I only, in the last 12 months, realised why I hate packing bags and why I hate packing in general, because as a kid, I had to keep packing my bag every week to go from parent to parent to parent to parent. So like the bag packing was associated with like just upset.
Yes.
And I would procrastinate about it, and so that's part of it. What, do you have a question?
I did.
I'm like, over to you.
So from 2 years old, you had a separated household. And there is obviously a lot of upset and things to deal with in that. And then when did, as you said, you've got multiple parents. So when did your step-parents become involved?
So my non-biological father, I think I might have been 4 to 6, but in that age range. He's just amazing. You know, he didn't have any kids of his own and treated my sister and I like his own, and has always done that. And then my mum and him had a child, my younger brother, and that was a really pleasant household until I got to probably like the age of 10 maybe, and then things just weren't great, you know. In their relationship there was lots of tension with like horse riding that I was doing, and between themselves, and I don't think they had the tools to deal with upsets in their relationships, you know, and I can only really appreciate that now, knowing how many upsets I've had in my relationship. Again, that whilst there was still the upset and between my biological parents, then there was the upset between my non-biological dad and my biological mum.
So really, wherever you went, there was some form of upset. So it wasn't really a break.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like as a kid, I just had experiences of being alone. Like, you know, I'm at my mum's more than I am at my dad's, and my dad's not there, and I feel alone. You know, I feel unloved. I feel all those feelings of self-worth just really just right there. So I never really learnt how to process or deal with emotions very well at all as a kid.
Is there any memory or time you want to share of, because, you know, you do keep saying upsets and things like that, which I think people can grasp what that means. Yeah, but I mean, is there a particular, like, what does it really look like in the real world? What is there something you want to share about what that would be like? Even if it's small as a child, obviously you take things in differently to maybe how you would as an adult.
Yeah, simple things like just being in the car, going from one parent to the other. I would be upset. I'd be crying. Like I didn't want to have to leave one parent to go to the other parent. And for being on the phone to one parent whilst I was at the other parent's, you know, like the check-in phone calls, I always felt like I was listened to in the phone calls. So I wanted to be secret and private and keep things to myself or be on my own. I only ever felt safe when I was on my own, like rather than being around my parents, because both of them had some incredible tempers, you know, like would just go from 0 to 100. And then I developed that way of being 0 to 100. It wasn't until I was 14 when I moved to my biological dad's and in with my stepmom and him that I discovered, and they taught me that you could have like difficult conversations without having to raise your voice.
Right.
And that was all new to me.
Okay, so from 2 to 14, you lived with your mum majority of the time. Yeah. Stepdad moved in at about 4 to 6, around that.
Yeah.
And then you moved in with your dad, your biological dad, and your stepmum at 14.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and what was that like? You were just sharing how the way they communicate, I guess, when things are upsetting, was I don't want to say better, but maybe a bit more constructive.
Yeah.
And maybe it was a bit more workable
Yeah.
than what you had experienced. So what was the teachings that you got in that type of communication? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So it was just that nobody like raised their voice, and that we could talk about things, and like there just wasn't this outrageous anger there. It was just we could just talk about things.
So it was more like you could be more yourself, maybe.
Yeah,
a bit more
I
comfortable.
could be a bit more safer because up until that point, it did not feel safe to talk about anything of importance with either parent. Quite frankly, in my whole life. So I just developed this really secretive way of living my life.
And bottling things up.
Bottling things up, and and the only outlet I had from about the age of 8 to 14 was horse riding. Like I just threw myself into horses because that was like my happy place. That was the only thing that I really enjoyed doing in my life.
Yeah, right.
And then when I moved to my dad's, because I was rebellious and didn't want to follow any rules
right,
at my mum's. I just chose to leave. And I had an identity crisis at the age of 14 or 15 because all I'd ever done, or I just knew myself as a horse rider. And that was really hard for me to go through. Like, there was a lot of crying, and somehow I found my way to being grateful. Like every day on the bus on the way to school, I would write like 50 to 100 things that I was grateful for, like the shoes on my feet on my legs, my like hands on my arms, getting out of bed every day. Like that was...
Wow, that's a pretty big thing to be doing at, what,
15?
15?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, some people don't even do it at our ages now. And I mean...
I don't even do it all the time.
No, I don't really do it. And you've got so much knowledge out there to say how good it is for you. So how did you come to start doing that?
I can't quite remember. I don't know. Like I read this book called The Secret, and I don't know if it was before or after I started this. But I got to a point where I was sick of being angry and upset about not riding my horses. And I just was I actually, I don't know how, this is amazing. I self-reflected and realized that every time I looked at somebody, I was foul. Like there was not a nice thought that I had about anybody.
Wow.
And when I was, this probably jumps ahead to when I was 18, but between 16 and 18, I still had lots of foul moments in my life because I left my dad's house too. I decided that I was going to look at the ground until I had something nice to say about someone that I looked at on the way past. So it literally started, like I remember walking over the bridge to uni and I would be looking at the ground and then I'd see people's feet and I'd start saying nice things about their shoes or their legs.
Yeah, right.
Until I got higher and higher until it was I could just see a nice thing about everyone that I saw.
That's a really great skill and something I think that's amazing that you taught yourself so young. And I guess recognizing that the way you had been being and the way maybe in which there was interactions in your households was not really the way that maybe you wanted to keep going with how things were.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it was wrong or right what happened. It's just that for you it wasn't working.
No. And a lot of this stuff is transgenerational. Is that the right word?
Sounds good to me.
It gets passed on through generation and generation. Like my mum's upbringing wasn't great. Her parents split up. Her mum's was not great either. None of them had the tools.
No.
And they desperately tried their damnedest too.
Of course.
But yeah, I think each one has gotten a little bit better.
So reflecting back and as to who you are now and to maybe what you've been through as you grew up, is there things now that you I guess we all get triggered by stuff, but is there things that come up for you now that you're like, wow, that really did impact me back then? Like those, because you've done some really great things in growing up with your gratitude and, you know, you trying to be not judgmental with people. But is there other things now that you have to do so you don't slip back into that kind of, maybe those old ways of being?
Yeah.
That was a very long-winded question. I do apologize.
There is. And I think we'll answer them in the podcast that we do when I talk about my recovery. One of the things I do a lot of now is go running.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
my mental health rather than my physical health. But yeah, if I was to take it back and just to my childhood, there was just a lot of resentfulness, abandonment, angry, yelling, shouting by me, my parents. It's just full of all that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that's what it was. And I just felt alone in it. And me and my sister were best friends up until probably the age of 10 or 12, and then we ended up, you know, it was competing with each other all the time. It wasn't very great. And yeah, so I felt like I lost my sister too at about the age of 14.
So it just created more of this loneliness that you felt.
Yeah. And we have a great relationship now too. And with my brother, I moved away from him, so I didn't have a relationship with him either. And I felt like I was leaving him. Leaving him. You know?
So abandoning him.
Abandoning him. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it just was. There was a lot of icky there. And I just made up one of the significant stories I made up about my childhood was that I'm just not good enough. You know, I'm not good enough for my dad to stay with my mum. I'm not good enough for my mum to not give me any feedback about riding a horse, even though she was just trying to help me. And that's something that I'm still dealing with today, that operates a lot of my subconscious is I'm not good enough. And that's something that I'm really going to task on at the moment and over the next few months.
Yeah, that's awesome, Britt. Thank you for sharing. I think the I'm not good enough story is pretty heavy in a lot of us out there. I know myself, that's a big one that I like to play. And it's really impactful. You know, it does impact your life in so many ways, and probably in ways that we don't even realize until we really do sit back and self-reflect.
Yeah, and you know, some of the impacts I couldn't even see unless someone pointed them out to me. Like in my relationship with my partner, not only am I not good enough for myself, I project it outwards. So he has the experience now while he's around me that he's not good enough.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to dive probably deeper into that in the last episode of this. We kind of jumped around a little bit, but I think it's good. Yeah. I think what you've shared today is probably really helpful for people to have. Maybe, you know, I would say some people can say that they've experienced the same things or been through the same stuff, but it also lets people look at what was their household. Like you've answered some really good questions and made some thought-provoking things as well for people to have a look at and you know, reflect on their household, or what was the communication style like in your household, or you know, what was it like packing a bag every weekend or every second weekend. You know, just those little things that you've brought up today, I think can really allow people to, after finishing this episode, to just sit back and think about how those things have impacted them, big or small.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say that I downplayed my childhood a lot throughout my early 20s because I was just my strong suits were being independent and on my own and being really intelligent, and I was defiant that my past didn't define me.
Yes.
But that was all on top of like trying to cover up an eating disorder and stuff that didn't work out about my life.
Yeah.
So it was pretty inauthentic. And I now firmly believe that, if you don't address and resolve things that happened in the past and put them in the past, they will keep impacting you in the future.
Totally agree. I think that is the perfect way to finish off this episode. Thank you so much, Britt, for sharing with us authentically about your childhood, and we really appreciate it. So
thank you, Taylor, and thank you to the person who suggested that we go back and do this, including you.
Yeah, I think it's been really good. So,
and if I triggered anything for you, there is the Butterfly Foundation. If you need any resources, please check them out. We do give you the number to them in some following episodes, or the is it the National Childcare Helpline is also available for any children out there that might be listening to this podcast. You are not alone. Go and speak to an adult, and you are loved.
Yes, you are so loved.
So loved. All right, thanks everyone.
See you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.